Dear friends, when we talk about Franciscan spirituality as a unique gateway to the mystical heart of God, what we are really saying is that Francis left us a legacy of love. He left us a unique legacy where we can incorporate all spiritual beliefs, all traditions going right back to the eons of time. Franciscan spirituality is not a replacement for God. It's not a new religion. It is a simpler way of living in the presence of God. It encompasses, as I've said, all beliefs. And I know in my heart as a contemplative Franciscan that it resonates with Celtic spirituality, honoring the divine in the sacred, in creation. As in Celtic spirituality we talk about the loricas, the pillars that sustain the beautiful people in their simple walk with a loving God. Pillars such as prayer, love, integrity, justice, peace, forgiveness, compassion, acceptance. Franciscan spirituality cannot be described as a religion. I hope you agree with me when I say it is a beautiful way of life because it respects the divine in each person. As Francis did. St. Francis, in my opinion, was never really fully understood by the church of his day. I guess that's because he wasn't academic enough. He wasn't a high-ranking cleric for people to take notice. And isn't that true of today? You might be talking a load of nonsense, but if you've got a PhD in some ology, then people sit back and will listen and probably use the gift of selective deafness. Francis wasn't an academic. Francis walked God's talk. Unlike many who considered themselves experts or learned men and women in the ologies that bring us to God or God's word into our lives, Francis walked the talk of God. He didn't talk it, he lived it. And I guess that's the reason why his simplicity has survived so many centuries against persecution, against schisms and conflict. And we know today, within the Christian family alone, there are so many divisions. And many of those divisions are caused by male ego, man's ego, like Henry VIII. Because he couldn't get his own way, he sets up a new religion, the Protestant Church. And the word Protestant means protestant. He protested against God about the Catholic Church being unreasonable and unfair. I'm not endorsing the Catholic Church here, but what I'm saying is Franciscan spirituality has a message in this modern world. In a world that has lost sight of beauty, in a world that has lost sight of creation, in a world that has lost sight of simplicity, in a world that needs direction. In this beautiful world, I call it my cathedral of God. Nature is God's cathedral, where we embrace the divine in the simple things like a blade of grass, in the daisy, the pansy, the beautiful rose, the lotus flower. And when we sit quietly in prayer in the garden, we may be feeling stressed, we may be feeling anxious, we may be feeling unwell. And then we hear the birds sing, and it lifts us out of ourself. And the tone, the beautiful sounds from the birds and the animal kingdom draws us back home, draws us back to Mother Earth. So Franciscan spirituality is about embracing all beliefs. Buddhism, our brothers and sisters who are Hindu, who are Sikh, who are Muslim, who are Jew. Because the one thing we all have in common is that we were all born for the love of God to touch us and to liberate us and to set us free from the self, the ego. And it is the self and the ego that has caused the most harm in God's plan for His children. And we're in a world today, yes, it's a beautiful world, but what I believe is happening is that there are spiritual, filial children who don't even know who God is. And isn't that sad? I would say that 5 out of every 10 people have no understanding or concept of a loving God. And they go through life with that spiritual hunger. They become addictive to material things, to possessions, to status, to labels, and they end up becoming the victims of their own cravings. Excuse me, please allow me to read this to you. It's from a beautiful little book, Finding Your Hidden Treasure by Benignus O'Rourke. And here he talks about, my silent heart opens like a flower. Elizabeth Rimmer writes about her own wrong expectations in one of her beautiful poems, and it reads, I thought perhaps you would come in splendor, with choirs of angels and golden majesty, and I would sing your praises through all eternity. I have no voice. I thought perhaps you would come in judgment, but you ask no questions, make no accusations. Only by your light I see my own sinfulness and your great mercy. I thought perhaps you would come in power, but you do not ask or say or do, but only be. And in the sun of your silence, my heart opens like a flower. And for me, what helps my heart open like a flower is knowing a man like Francis of Assisi. He's not God's replacement. He's an ambassador for God, an ambassador of peace. But he's an ambassador for the ordinary man and woman who is desperately seeking a meaning and purpose to their life. And Franciscan spirituality that comes to the divine through the natural world empowers the heart to surrender to the mystical heart of a loving God, to become a part of the divine oneness of all that is, a oneness that's all-encompassing of all faiths and none, because we are children of a loving God, children of a Father, Mother God who loves us and who will do everything within their power to empower us return home.